The book of First Chronicles. When it comes to the authorship, known as a chronicler, scholars have long referred to the author of the book as this, but it's anonymous. But Jewish tradition speculates that Ezra could have written 1st and 2nd Chronicles, and which, like Samuel and Kings, it was originally formed as one work. But nothing within the text provides a definite clue as to the compiler of the material. So we'll call it the author as anonymous. When it comes to the date, the books of 1st and 2nd Chronicles may have been written between 450 and 425 BC, and during the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, and it was when the Jewish people were restored to Jerusalem after the Babylonian captivity, and when they rebuilt the walls surrounding Jerusalem under Nehemiah's leadership. So when it comes to the purpose and summary of the book, in the Hebrew canon of Scripture, 1st and 2nd Chronicles formed a single volume called The Matters of the Days of the Kings of Judah and Israel, or it could be called The Annals of the Kings of Judah and Israel, and they're cited as dependable historical documentation. So whoever the author was, he was very meticulous as a historian who carefully utilized both official and unofficial documents. So the question is raised, why do we need the books of 1st and 2nd Chronicles when we already have the history of the books of Samuel and the books of Kings? Just as the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John each offer a different perspective on the life of Jesus, the books of Chronicles present the history of Israel with the purpose of presenting a different perspective than the other historical books. And the books of 2nd Samuel and 1st and 2nd Kings reveal the monarchies of Israel and Judah, in particular the sins of the nations that resulted in the exile. But the books of Chronicles, written after the time of the exile, focused on the elements of history that God wanted the returning Jews to meditate upon. That obedience that results in God's blessing, the priority in the temple of the priesthood, and the unconditional promises to the house of David. So Chronicles is a summary of Hebrew history that duplicates much of the books of Samuel and Kings, but it focuses more on the spiritual deeds and misdeeds of the kings and on the importance of the worship of the Lord that's done properly through the ministry of the priests and the temple. So God's people, Israel, they just returned from Babylon. And though the Israelites wandered, they wondered about their place in God's plan because of all the negative things that happened, the disciplines, that they do have religious or spiritual continuity. And there's a divinely planned connection going back to Adam, Noah, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and especially with the great King David. So in fact, God continues to work with them at the present time after the Babylonian exile, and through them to bring the nation to the fullness of times and to fulfill his promises he made to the nation. And so the key elements or some themes in 1st Chronicles lists priests, Levites, armies, temple officials, and other leaders of various ministries. And so you can see that throughout the book. And so the structure of the book you can see is this. 1st Chronicles chapters 1 through 9. It's the historical connections from Adam to David. And then 1st Chronicles chapters 10 through 29, you see David's spiritual leadership and reign. And so it's really structured in two major sections. And so the key verse and passage of 1st Chronicles is 1st Chronicles 7:11 through 14, which says, "All these were sons of Jedidiah according to the heads of their father's household. 17,200 mighty men of valor who were ready to go out with the army to war. Shupam and Hupam were the sons of Ir. Husham was the son of Ahir. And the sons of Naphtali were Jezal, Guni, Jezer, and Shalon, the sons of Bilah. And the sons of Manasseh were Ezrael, whom the Aramean concubine bore. She bore Machir, the father of Gilead." And another main verse or passage in the book is 1 Chronicles 29:18 to 19, which says, "O Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, in Israel, our fathers preserved this in the intentions of your heart of your people and direct their heart to you. Verse 19 says, and give to my son Solomon a perfect heart to keep your commandments, your testimonies and your statutes, and to them all, and to build the temple for which I have made provision. And so through some of the key verses in this book, you see Christ's portrayal depicted as the king. And so other points to remember in this book is the chronicler begins to trace Israel's heritage from Adam down through the tribes of Israel. And this is Israel's religious heritage. And you see this in chapters 1 through 8. You also see David's spiritual leadership was marked by 7 actions. 1 was men gathering under his leadership. 2 is by him returning the ark to Jerusalem. 3 is by his plan to build a temple, which the Lord interrupted by stating that not he, but his son would build the temple. And 4, by his wars that defeated Israel's oppressors, and by his plans for suppliers to build the temple and his plans for service at the temple, which was number 5. And number 6, by his military and civilian organization. And then finally, number 7, by his challenges to Solomon and to the nation. And so David's main failure was spiritual and national, to take a census of his military power instead of trusting God to protect the nation. So 1 Chronicles ends with David giving his vision for the future in charge to the leaders and people in chapters 28 and 29. And this is the book of 1 Chronicles.